I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Mobility in Manufacturing. My name is Arlene Itori, and I'm a webinar coordinator for the Outsourcing Institute, and it is our pleasure to be the co-host of today's event with Stefanini. I'll be working in the background to help answer any technical or general questions that you may have. We encourage you at any time during the presentation to submit your questions to today's speakers. To do this, click on the questions box, type your question in the space provided, and click on the Submit button. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will be receiving a follow-up email in approximately 2 days, which will include a link with today's recorded webinar and presentation slides. The webinar recording and the presentation slides will also be available at outsourcing.com. So without further ado, I will now turn it over to our moderator, Tony Mataya, Managing Partner of ThinkSolutions, for the formal introduction of today's speakers. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to the webinar. It's a great topic today, and we have some great speakers on board to help take you through mobility in manufacturing and some solutions and approaches that you can use. So today, my name is Tony Mataya. As I said, I'm Managing Partner at ThinkSolutions. We're a sourcing advisory firm. My background is in IT and technology, and then helping clients who are looking at sourcing transactions as well as nearshoring and moving work to and from India and offshore, and helping with cost reduction and other initiatives. The other presenters, we have a great team today. Loyal Pridgen, he is from Stefanini, and he's the Global Development Center and Application Managed Services, North America and Asia Pacific. He is really focusing on solution design for Stefanini's customers and potential customers. He's got over 25 years experience in solutions design in a lot of areas, including server, web, mobile, performance management, data warehousing, and a lot of different industries. So he's got a good perspective. And then Cristiano Oliveira, he is Senior Vice President of Business Applications at Kony Solutions. And he's got a lot of experience working in all different aspects of technology, including mobile applications and cloud. He was also co-founder and Chief Technology Officer at Spring Wireless. In working with SAP, he's done a lot of sourcing development and had one of the largest implementations in Brazil. So hopefully we will have all the information you need and be able to provide you with some great perspective. A little bit about the Outsourcing Institute. I'm a senior advisor with the Outsourcing Institute, and the Outsourcing Institute is outsourcing.com. It's a hub for really the outsourcing industry with over 70,000 executive members globally. And it's a great place to see trends, best practices, case studies, get some training if you need it, access to information and networking for people in this space. And it's really a good place to help if you're trying to do outsourcing and you're looking for ways to do it in a more efficient way. There are demand generation programs and other sponsor opportunities that if you're interested, if you're looking for a job in the sourcing world, they have a recruiting service through CMS and often do various events, one of which is they do several road shows per year. And those are really a good time to get together, network, and get a good perspective on outsourcing. So the agenda today, well, first we're going to go through mobility, trends, and challenges for manufacturing. What are those things that are occurring now that are causing a lot of change in the industry? And then we're going to talk about some solution maps for manufacturing, some keys to getting new ways of developing those things and implementing mobility in a place where it's currently lacking. And then we'll talk about manufacturing mobility drivers and case studies. We'll also have a demo to show you an actual implementation, how it works. And then what we'd like to do is do Q&A at the end. So as you submit your questions, we'll hold those to the end and then go through those when we finish the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Loyal.
Thanks, Tony, for that introduction. So let's start with one long-term trend, and then I'll talk about some with much shorter timelines. The way business interacts with its customers has changed over time. I'm going to use retail as a sample here, but it's true for other businesses as well. A retail business originally only had physical stores through which all its customers came and transacted business with those stores at the register. That model basically stayed in place until the introduction of call centers where customers could call in and make an order. In the last 20 years, the web introduced another model for interacting with customers. This model has been more convenient for the customer. For the business community, the web has had a lower transaction cost than other earlier models. Recently, mobile phones, and even more recently, tablets, have created a new set of channels through which customers expect to interact. It's not hard to envision a future where new devices and models continue to increase the fragmentation. It could be a refrigerator with an interface to easily track a shopping list, or maybe it's a brick mason with that mobile-enabled wristwatch ordering another load of bricks. It's important to realize that these new channels have not replaced prior points of interaction for most organizations. For most organizations, all these points of interaction need to coexist and ideally work well together. It is also interesting to note that the time between disruptive cycles has gotten smaller with each new phase. The organizations that excel in managing the fragmentation and expect the next wave of fragmentation are going to have an advantage in the marketplace. Each of these new delivery channels requires that we provide an intuitive user experience, but organizations also must manage a lot that the user does not see. For example, storing data on the device is a great way of improving the user experience, but the options for doing that vary from BlackBerry to Apple to Android. And synchronizing that data between the back-end system and the different devices can vary for different operating systems. Transactions need to be securely managed on all these channels. Integration to existing ERP systems need to work reliably and scalably for this new world order. Enterprises need to make sure that they consider the foundation capabilities at the start for building this channel support. A recent Gartner study demonstrates how rapidly the market for mobile devices is changing. Devices are coming out with new features and capabilities that just a few years ago would have been impossible to imagine being available. One of the challenges for manufacturers is the premium price for the hardened devices that they need in their environments. These hardened devices are often relatively slow to the market and therefore run on operating systems that may be obsolete or do not support the latest tools. For example, many hard devices still run on Microsoft 6.5, which had a very limited JavaScript support and other upgrade limitations. And there's not a clear upgrade path for these devices to newer versions of the Microsoft mobile operating system offerings. Manufacturers certainly need to consider hardware and software upgrade paths as they consider required devices in the future. Organizations should try to be as creative as they move forward to see if there are off-the-shelf platforms that can serve their needs. I was recently in a restaurant in Quebec where the waiters all used their own phones to enter orders back to the kitchen from the table. For those who did not have phones, iPod Touches were provided. Quite interesting to have your drink order show up before the waiter even leaves the table. Now that's truly taken advantage of the bring your own device, or BYOD, to improve the user experience. Another trend that organizations can take advantage of is the movement of data to the cloud. Gartner expects that most smart devices will be connected to at least 3 cloud-based services within 2 years. Leveraging these cloud-based services can be a way for organizations to move more quickly and also push scalability issues to other providers. So what are the common challenges that manufacturers face? Well, for starters, manufacturers' ERP systems and other back-end systems have the data and the applications, but often offer limited mobility solutions. The ERP vendors have been caught off guard by the rapidly changing marketplace as well. Manufacturers often use third parties for many of their field operations. This can limit the ability of an organization to mandate a specific device or platform for those users. It also creates another level of complexity for application integration. Mobility solutions that exist provide little field planning capability. Many mobilization efforts have been little more than mobile enabling an existing web application. But the nature of those applications is that they were just web apps and do not facilitate the planning needs of these remote users. Limiting channels supported may result in a lack of competitiveness in the market. The marketplace is moving so quickly that betting on a single solution can easily be a wrong bet, even if it was based on the best data available. Another challenge is that IT departments have huge backlogs. Not only are most IT organizations stretched thin, but they have limited experience with mobile solutions and are even less prepared for the complexity of developing for multiple channels. Finally, ruggedized devices are relatively expensive and often quickly obsolete. Obsolete devices may limit the ability of an organization to innovate or even keep up with the market. There are several trends emerging in the marketplace, though. One common technique for managing mobility was to mandate a single device. That is rapidly changing to a BYOD model. Even those that are looking at a specific device are recognizing the need to plan for that device's obsolescence over time. As has been the evolution of every platform over time, whether it was mainframe, client server, or web, the initial programs for most companies tend to be custom initially. But over time, organizations move to best-of-breed, modifiable, off-the-shelf programs. Companies are looking to take some control of their applications back, especially for internal or partner users, and creating corporate stores. These stores are often control features or protect data to limit organizational risk. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the techniques for getting to the web quickly was to just mobile enable an existing website. However, these mobile applications were often unusable and don't really reflect the reality of mobile customer needs. Streamlining business processes by taking advantage of mobility is going to create a stronger value proposition for the business. To build applications for this new set of channels, organizations have dealt with the new mobile platforms by creating new applications for each channel. There is a separate application for the desktop web, and another for the mobile phone, and another for tablets. And even within these channels, there are multiple separately built applications. For example, Android phones would be built with one code base. iPhones would be built with a completely separate code base. Each of these application bases need to be managed separately. Security patches, feature updates would all need to be managed separately. This model has proven complex and costly for maintenance and a barrier to innovation. So organizations are starting to evaluate multi-channel development platforms that allow the company to manage all these features within a single code base across all these channels. These platforms manage not only separate user interfaces, but also manage the other production services such as security and data synchronization in a common way across all the channels. One of the leaders in this marketplace is Kony. And now I'd like to introduce Cristiano, who will talk more about opportunities for manufacturers to innovate and how to architect themselves for the future. Cristiano?
Thank you, Loyal. So to start the presentation, it's interesting if you have our kickoff slide, a view of the value chain of manufacturing. So when you see the three major steps on manufacturer's value chain, considering the supply chain, the demand chain, and the supporting process, most companies, they are facing multiple opportunities to mobilize the existing systems they have, ranging from goods received on the warehouse to trade marketing in the field, to applications as simple as expense report or approvals in the workflow in general. But when you see the three major areas in the value chain for manufacturers, there are different possible approaches. So when you go to the next slide, that is the first and most traditional approach. That's what I call the mobilize using add-ons. So traditionally, most of the implementations today on mobile, they use an assumption that existing features and existing data will be used on mobile device as they are used today on desktop. However, we have benefits on this approach initially. This approach limits companies to what they have and not necessarily features and data that were designed to be used on a desktop reflect 100% or the core needs we have with users in the field. When we see another possible approach, that is a layer approach that focuses not only in mobilizing but also focus on innovating, we start to see that the leading companies today in implementing successful mobile projects, they are starting to realize that you should design these applications or you should adopt applications from vendors that consider inside approach, a mobile-first approach that you first understand your needs from a field standpoint, from a mobile standpoint, then you start to connect the dots with the features you have, the data you have. And usually, more than this blue layer that we see on the mobilized approach, that's more technical layer. This comes to realizing that additionally features and data, that's more on a business layer, not only the technical assets to do this connection between the fields and the existing systems. So when you see back the value chain on the next slide, and we see the 4 major areas, there is no one approach, one of these 2 approaches not necessarily fits on all the possible scenarios. But typically, when you take a look on the supply chain and the supporting process, these applications are more desk-oriented. That means the user is completing or executing one step inside a much broader process. And these users, they are mobile, but they work inside the office as mobile workers, or they spend some time outside the office, but not 100% as a field worker that I'm going to define better later. So on this scenario, what we see is an approach that I can, most of the time, extend what I have. I can leverage the data I have, but I'm talking about simpler applications that necessarily do not cover 100% of the process. Just give 2 great examples. Many of the supporting process, they work on a workflow and approvals fashion. That means that when you are doing your expense report, you can do that on a mobile way, then you go back to your back office infrastructure, someone's going to approve, then it goes to financials, then it goes to payment, etc., etc. The same happens, for example, with stock transfer. I'm inside a warehouse, and I'm moving goods from one area to the other. It's a one-step connecting a much bigger, much broader process. When you go to the next slide and you see the demand chain, on the demand chain, it's a different paradigm in terms of usage, in terms of application scope. Usually manufacturers demand chain that ranges from marketing, sales, distribution to service. That is, all the steps on your value chain to deal with the demands for the products. Usually these 4 steps, they require applications in the field that are more process-oriented. For example, when you talk about a field service application for a manufacturer that produce equipment, or talk about a beverage company that have people work on trading market activities, these applications in the field, they go beyond a single step. Usually they are a combination of different steps, and they are almost a process by itself. Also, the user is not only mobile, but it's what I call a field user, a field worker. A field worker is not only mobile occasionally or mobile inside a company. This person usually has an assignment, a route to visit multiple locations. Can be a location for equipment, can be a location for a customer, etc. So the main point before we transition to the second part of my presentation is there are two ways to approach mobility, enterprise mobility in terms of applications. One is extend what you have with your current features and data, usually applicable to supply chain and supporting process, or you can develop more complex applications on your demand chain side where you need more sophisticated perspective in terms of application, logic, and data. Transition to the next slide. Here, I have a definition, what I call the innovation drivers when I talk about demand chain applications. So on the demand chain applications, there are 4 innovation drivers in my perspective. Number 1 is the mobile-first applications. So the mobile-first applications mean when you are designing there are 4 categories on the demand chain, you should take a look first what you need in the field, let's say an outside-in approach, map what you need in terms of data and features, see what you have inside your company, and in my experience, I'm working in this industry for in the last 12 years, most of the case there are features and data lacking. And these companies, they miss front office. There's a layer between their mobile applications and their back office to sustain or to trigger innovation in terms of different approach what they're doing in the field compared to what they're doing in the office. When you go to the second innovation driver on the next slide, we have what they call the interconnect applications. So if you pay attention on the left side of each of these 4 slides, we have a diagram that is transitioning. So now we see we have not just one application, we have 2 applications. So what does it mean when I say interconnect applications? Traditional design of mobile applications considers that every transaction in data goes directly from one application to your traditional back-office systems. But when you have an operation in the field, for example, you are collecting merchandise information in a retailer, that is your customer, in a consumer products scenario. And on the next day, you have a salesperson going to the same retailer. This data should flow seamless from one application to the other and enable the salesperson to be knowledgeable about the latest developments that happen from a merchandise standpoint. And usually you can do that more efficiently, more seamless, and even real time if you do that connect the application directly with this front office, not having to go back to a system like a ERP that's not designed for these seamless interactions in terms of field process. When we go to the next driver, we go to what I believe it's crucial these days, and Loyal explained his initial considerations, is cloud applications. Today, it's very hard to talk about mobile applications disconnected with cloud applications, mainly when they focus on the demand chain. Why that? Because the mobile space changed in a pace that is much faster than the traditional back-end operations. And when we talk about cloud, it's not only about hosting or leveraging a more elastic and scalable infrastructure, but also SaaS is a different paradigm in terms of architecture. That the aspect of short deployments, real-time upgrades, and other key concepts that enable companies to move faster than the traditional enterprise architecture paradigms that we have today on most of the systems deployed. So here, the key point you should consider is, as mobile is moving fast, not only in terms of mobile operating systems as just a technical aspect, but companies are leveraging mobile as a new competitive advantage in terms of field operations. As fast as you can adapt to new scenarios, that will be your business competitiveness from an overall standpoint. Yes, to close these innovation drivers, we go to the next slide, that's the number 4. We go to a point that also Loyal mentioned his initial considerations, that is what I call cross-company applications. Mainly on the manufacturing industry, that is a very broad definition that ranges from consumer goods or machinery, chemicals, and other different verticals. When we talk about manufacturing, it's very common that third parties do some of the demand chain process discussed initially. For example, when we talk about field marketing, it's pretty common that have a third party working to collect market intelligence on the retailers. When we talk about distribution, not necessarily all the companies, they make the distribution by themselves. So when you want to standardize your mobile application across your different partners, it's very hard to do that because you usually have a different backend systems. So another great opportunity is leverage all the 3 initial innovations that I mentioned, including the cloud applications, and start to have a common hub where all these different parties can connect. And then later, you can distribute to different backend systems that each of them have. This example here is when you think about standardizing your field services process. So independently if it's your own technicians or third party, or talk about your sales team, if it's a direct sales team or indirect sales team, all of them are using the same application, which means they are following the same standards and the same procedures. So when you combine all these innovation drivers and the initial perspective that I presented in terms of the value chain, we go to my last slide before the demo, that is how we see all these applications being connected. So on the next slide, we have just a high-level summary that what I call a solution map for the main chain. So I'm not limiting the scope for mobility in manufacturing for the main chain. It's for the webinar today, that's the area that we're focusing, but definitely on the future have another webinars touching the other 2 areas in supply chain and supporting process. But coming back to the main chain, so that's a solution map that what we have when you combine all these concepts. So we have the field marketing person working on retail execution improvement and tracking the agreements with retailers for manufacture itself through retailers. Then this market intelligence information and all the data you are collecting then can move to the field salesperson that is focused on increasing their productivity, go to more places, and also be more effective in terms of sales. That means sales more. Then there is a connection with the distribution team. Then with some manufacturers, they have, for example, beverage usually have vending machines. Or some manufacturers, the field services is that directly connect with the product itself. That is a coffee machine, just an example. So when you see this 4th process on the demand chain and you see the layer called business management, so the business management means that is, okay, I have all these applications in the field, but on the front office, I can do my planning, tracking, and analyze what's going on in the field from operational standpoint and business standpoint. The goal here is not to replace the existing systems, but enable manufacturers to have front office that is directly correlated with what's happening in the field and mirror the needs in terms of planning, tracking, and analysis. So with this slide, I finish my PowerPoint session of the presentation, and I'm going to transition to demo. So before you make the transition on what's the goal of this demo, if you see on my initial slide, there are probably 30, 40 different applications we could demonstrate. So we just picked one that is direct store delivery that's applicable to different manufacturers. But the goal here is to explain more how we envision applications on the manufacturing environment, not necessarily the unique features of this process. So see it as more as a sample, not necessarily a single application that we're talking on this whole webinar. So doing the transition for my demo. So just a second, we are doing the transition. So now you see the demo. So what I have here? So to make the flow better on this webinar, we decided to present a video because it's there's an easy way to do the presentation, spend more time on the explanation, less on the navigation. So the first screen we have, it's a login. It's pretty straightforward. But here there are some interesting tricks that we learned deploying this to tens to hundreds of companies. That is small things like the keyboard is already shown. So you don't have to click on the field to have the keyboard showing up. Why that? It's a small trick, but we know that on this screen, necessarily you have to input data, and the number of fields are very limited. So why not have the keyboard ready, and you save the person to do another click to have the keyboard being shown. So when you go to first screen of the application, that's an interesting concept that we have at Kony Applications in the work with Stefanini. That is, the first screen on our standard applications that can be changed by our customers, but usually not recommend that, is what you call a dashboard. So if I'm a salesperson and I'm starting the use of my application, the first thing I want to see is how is my performance. And on our applications, we have two categories of performance. One is effectiveness, another one is efficiency. So efficiency means I can do the same thing multiple times. So I can increase the number of visits. And also have effectiveness. That means I'm not doing more, but I'm doing better. So for example, I'm selling more. So I'm not only visiting, that's efficiency, but I'm selling more. That's the revenues that we call effectiveness. So here there are different metrics that we have standard on our applications, but here's just an example. So when you see this dashboard, and I'm going to spend a few seconds here more than the other screens, we have not only where we are, for example, in visits on the bottom of the screen. I see that I have a finished and completed between 10 to 14 visits. But more important than that is what is my projection in terms of visits accomplished. That is 22. And you see that the bar from the 14 to 22 is in yellow. So on our system, not only tracking what you did and also showing your goal, that is 27, we're also predicting if you, as a field worker, will be able to accomplish your goals. So that's why this screen is the first extremely critical and is applicable to all the other processes discussed before. Because on this screen, we have great preparation to see what I have to do, where I'm behind, where I'm done, and what I need to improve. So as we move forward here, we have some tricks like we don't have the traditional module screen that most of the applications have today. We have here a list of steps I have. And these steps means more flow, less modules. So we have our dashboard notifications. We have our start of the day, routes, end of the day, usually a flow that you have. And then we have our master data that can check like customer products. So moving forward, as we start our day, here is a screen that can do my checklist. So for example, if I'm a field service technician, salesperson, or anyone who has a car or truck from the company, and I have to do my checklist, that's an obligation in terms of steps on my software. So I take a picture of my odometer, I do my checklist, and I'm ready to start my route execution. That's the next step. So on my route execution, I have the visa I have to do today. Again, that's a sales application, but all that fourth process I mentioned before, that's an applicable feature. One approach we have at Kony is our field applications, they rely on a same base application. So we have a predefined instruction flow for all the field applications. Then we just connect the specific features, behavior, and flows. So why that's great, if a customer use a sales application, when he goes to a marketing application, distribution application, in fact, the same software in terms of data and features, etc. So you have loaded your customers for your sales team. The customer already loaded for a marketing team. So it's not a, let's say, silo applications. All the applications we have on the fields, they are interconnected. So here on my route, I have also the option to see a map. And the map, there are different tricks that you can have. But here's just a quick look. Consider our time limitations, just to give you an idea about different perspectives you can have about the route, list, map, and some examples you have or scenarios you have, appointments, you can even have a calendar. So then I select a visit. I'm going to start my visit. So here I start my visit, and you see there's a pop-up here. What does pop-up means? When you talk about the interconnect applications, one key features we have is the context awareness. So the application knows where I am, the specific store I'm visiting on this sample use case, and based on the data that was collected by the marketing person, I have a notification telling me that a competitor is here, so I have to sell a product from my portfolio that competes against that other product. And on one of my metrics that I showed the dashboard was presence. And long story short, this is a pop-up connect that metric. So that means that all the features, data, and flows that I have, they are interconnected to enable the person to perform their job and achieve their goals. So as I have an OK here, then I'm in progress. Then here, there's another interesting concept that is, all the views, they have tasks. So we are not limited to the tasks we have on our standard product. So here, for example, I'm as a salesperson. I have a sales order, but I also have some market intelligence data that I'm going to collect. Or I may have a return order. So different users, they have different tasks based not only on the user case, but also in the specific location they are. So in this location, I want to return an order. But in other locations, I'm not necessarily going to do that. So you go back to the context awareness capability I mentioned before. So we're going to select our sales order. Here's a process that usually is more extensive in terms of time. So I'm going faster here. Since this application was an example, not the primary focus of today. So I'm creating my sales order, selecting items, adding to my shop cart. Here I can do some filters, again, to do a better use of the real estate of the screen. That's on a smartphone. I have these menus on the left and right. Then I did some filter. I'm going to select items that are shown on my filter. And I'm going to add them to my shop cart. So when I go to my shop cart, as a salesperson, I can play with my discounts, and also I can add items that I know by the product ID. Don't need to go on that step-by-step process of filtering, etc. Then I can do a mass change in terms of quantity. Don't have to input one by one. So the overall system was designed to minimize clicks, not because it's better in terms of software, because it represents a faster way to execute the job. So here I complete the sales order, and I can do my other tasks on the specific location. But for the demo purpose, we are coming back to here, and I'm going to finish my visit. It's not the goal today on again on the demo, but we are showing only the mobile piece, but all these planning steps, these change in terms of status, etc., they are connected with a front office that we developed at Kony as part of the product. So when you deploy the solution, not only deploying the mobile application, but also deploying the end-to-end process to get from your master data, your planning, your execution in the field, tracking of what's going on in the field, and the analysis of the business performance you had, connect with the systems you have, because the intention is not to replace, but to complement. So after I finish my demo, I'm going to handle back to Arlene so we can start our final considerations and take your questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cristiano, for the demonstration. I think it shows well how the mobile-enabled, well-thought-out application can truly facilitate manufacturing organization. So as we wrap up here, a quick discussion of who is Stefanini. Stefanini is a 25-year-old global technology services organization with over $8 billion in annual sales. Stefanini is headquartered in Sao Paulo and has over 17,000 employees in 30-plus countries. Stefanini provides a broad array of technology services from mobility to SAP to service desk. And Stefanini is honored to have won many awards from such organizations as the Black Book of Outsourcing. And Stefanini's clients include Fortune 500 organizations, as well as small and regional businesses looking to grow by leveraging our scale and knowledge. A few quick points in conclusion. Mobility is here to stay. If you have not started, you'll be falling behind. However, you can learn from those who have gone before you and make sure you're creating a solid foundation architecturally and organizationally for mobility. And finally, I hope you will consider Stefanini as your partner for mobility strategy and delivery. Stefanini has a broad range of mobility services that we provide, and at this point, I think I'll hand it back to Tony. We can for questions.
Yeah, great job, guys. I appreciate you going through the demo. I think that was helpful to illustrate it. A couple of questions. One is, can you talk a little bit about the tool? You know, when you have all these disparate user interfaces, then you talked about a tool that you can use that generates code for multiple platforms, and a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, there are multiple tools on the market, but the one we was referring to is actually from Kony. Kony has the Kony One platform. It basically provides the ability to, within a single code base, support basically deploying to all the different, including web, including mobile devices, and all the different mobile devices, as well as tablets and even things like kiosks. Within that code base, you get a single connectivity to your back end, and it also provides capabilities such as security platforms, the synchronization capability. So effectively, in that tool set, the Kony platform is managing all that for you, so that you can get away from building an application for each environment, for each new tool. One of the things that's really good about Kony is they have an SLA that guarantees that their platform and the tools that you have will be ready for the new tools when they come out, pretty much at the point that those tools came out. So, for example, the BlackBerry 10, when it came out recently, the Kony One platform basically provided that capability to those customers, and they were able to maybe refactor a bit to take advantage of some of the unique features of BlackBerry, but effectively their code was able to run pretty much immediately. So that's an example of the multi-development chat platform, Kony.
What about from a testing perspective? You know, when you have a lot of different interfaces and user access, can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that you handle testing in that environment?
Sure. So there's a couple different techniques. One is mostly the tools will support emulators, and I think that's a starting point for anything. You can find a lot just through code emulators to see how does it look, how does it feel, so that would be the starting point for any testing initiative for your developers, etc. There are also cloud-based platforms for cloud-based testing solutions that are out there and available on the market. So that's another option. Cristiano, any others?
Yeah, sure. Laurie, I'd like to make two contributions to your answers. Just going back to the multi-channel technology that you explained really well. One interesting point to take in consideration is all the applications we have at Kony, they are developed on this multi-channel platform. So when we have on the demo that features running on that specific case on the iPhone, the same features are available on the web. So if you have, for example, people working with stores that you go to individual stores, usually use a small form factor like a smartphone, iPhone, for example. But you have people going to retail chains that you go there for more negotiation standpoint. And you can leverage the same features running on notebook. So interesting point is we not only have a multi-channel platform, but we are also a heavy user of our own platform to develop our applications. So that's an interesting point. I talk about testing. Kony just announced it on our user group conference a couple of weeks ago that on the second half of this year, date is due to be announced, we'll have a testing tool integrated with the Kony One development environment. That will add one of the main challenges we have today, that is how we can test all these different screen size form factors across multiple devices. So today, Stefanini has a very well-structured approach for testing, and with this tool in the future, I believe we can do an even better job in terms of test automation, in terms of tools and process.
Okay, that's helpful. I know in the marketplace there's also a rise in crowdsourcing services to help handle the multi-platform environment. What about, you know, we talked a little bit about ruggedized devices and devices that become obsolete, but is there any way to kind of integrate those and extend their life along with or alongside the newer implementations of the new technologies like mobility?
Yes. Well, I think the key there is when you're taking a look at these devices, trying to create a platform, a set of services, a set of capabilities, so that the applications themselves are really just the user interface as much as possible, and then so the web services components, that piece doesn't have to change to your back-end systems. Then if you take advantage of a tool like Kony, which actually does support the older platforms, then when you build those applications for like a Windows 6.5 device, then effectively you are just refactoring for the new devices when those become available. But I'd also take a hard look at when is a ruggedized device truly necessary in the environment. You know, sometimes you're talking about a potential $3,000 premium, for a device. Are there devices out there that are cost efficient enough? Will they break? Do I really need that? Might be a consideration as well. What in this particular environment, what's the cost of replacement versus that ruggedization as well?
Well, I think a lot of the new technologies with LifeProof or OtterBox or some other, vendors that are making some off-the-shelf products that give pretty good protection for a lot of the mobility devices?
So what I believe is that the challenge today for a rugged device are on the manufacturing environment. There are some use cases you cannot afford to have anything else that's not a rugged device, like some industrial environments, etc. But as you pointed pretty well, the pace of innovation on the consumer-grade device, combined with these, let's say, third-party accessories that make this device more rugged, more resistant to water, dusty, impact, etc. I believe that the manufacturers have, let's say, more options, and they have to make a trade-off that is, when you select a rugged device, usually the return on investment is on the long run. So in terms of innovation, you cannot be on the edge as you would be on operating systems or devices that are changed more frequently. So there's a trade-off. There's not a one-fits-all, but what I see is a trend that is manufacturers are picking rugged device when they don't have any other option. But in most of the case, they're trying to minimize the compromise of consumer-grade device using accessories that improve resistance from a different standpoint.
Maybe this is a question on the Kony tool, but for customers who have, let's say, a lot of RFIDs implemented in the manufacturing area, or specialized manufacturing equipment, or CAD/CAM, or other things like that, are there APIs available that can receive data collection and implement that as part of the tool?
Well, today on the current version of the Kony platform, we support a range of commercial operating systems, Windows, iOS, Android, BlackBerry, and so on. But we have plans for the future to start supporting more machine-to-machine environments where we are going to get data directly from sensors, appliances, and have them integrated on our platform. So today we are primarily focused on smartphones, tablets, desktops, and all the variations in between. But we have plans in the future to start supporting more machine-to-machine environments with sensors and other equipment, as you mentioned.
One other thing I'd point out, Cristiano, is that for devices that have those add-ons and are supported by the kind of standard operating systems, there is a foreign feature interface, so being able to access APIs or other capabilities that exist on those devices is available through the tool set as it exists now.
Definitely, definitely. If you are making the connection between these devices, these equipment and sensors to operating systems supported by Kony, definitely we can do this connection today using the foreign function interface. You are totally correct.
Well, another question. If a customer is kind of at the beginning stages of this consideration and architecture, what is kind of can you take them through a process of maybe step one, what's the first thing? Is it workshops? What are the kinds of things you guys typically would do to help a customer who's considering this? Do you do an assessment of their environment, or can you kind of walk through and describe what that typical engagement would look like, and how you've helped other customers and go through that?
Sure. So actually, you hit it on the head. It's typically you would start with kind of a workshop where you go through and define what are the current tools, what are the current systems in place, what are the current processes, and then start evaluating where can we optimize the current processes within those systems. What are the touch points for those applications as they exist now? Then, so you start to build those. Effectively, you're building a use case model, but it's specific to the mobility space. Although, really, I say it's specific to the mobility space, but it really should be all the services that the organization as a whole are presenting, how do we make sure we're scaling for those for the future going, in all cases, and connecting the dots between them. So one of the things that we often look at is being able to have applications be available and the right pieces of the applications available to wherever the user is at that point in time. So if I wake up in the morning, I should be able to do a quick check, and on my phone, that maybe it's sitting on my desktop or my laptop or my tablet that's sitting on my desk. I get to work, I might be using my web-enabled, I might be out on the field and back to using a tablet or another device, maybe my Surface. So trying to make sure you're connecting the dots and understanding how users interact, how they behave. And then the key on that, making sure your architecture supports your needs for this phase and future phases. So considering, do we do field services with partners? Are we going to do it in the future? Do we need to make sure we've got the integration capability to connect to other organizations, or are we going to be, completely siloed? How are we going to maintain the applications? Do we need to support this on multiple devices right now or over time? So going through those evaluation considerations, and migrating those tools and capability to the new platforms, to the new capabilities. And then, basically deployment, testing, services. Testing tends to be a bit more complex, as you indicated earlier, just from the standpoint of supporting so many different devices.
Another question. Does the Kony tool have built-in connectors with existing ERP systems?
Yes, it does. In particular, Kony just acquired a company called Sky that has got a namespace connectivity to SAP, which is fully integrated into their 5.5 release of Kony, which is coming out next month. And that basically, in particular, is actually is a leading-edge connectivity to SAP. I think it probably does SAP connectivity better than SAP does, but also has connections to other back-end systems, including things like SharePoint and web services and other back-end tools.
On our platform, we have a capability called Enterprise Explorer. And the Enterprise Explorer is an extensive collection of pre-built off-the-shelf connectors that including the ones that Loyal mentioned. So it's a very extensive list of more than 100 different connectors. So usually you can virtually connect with any system using these pre-built connectors or using more standard open interface like web services and the variations around web services. It depends if we're talking about a business-to-employee solution or a business-to-consumer solution. So different, let's say, use cases require different integration needs.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to answer all the questions and go through the